The sun's brilliant golden light shined through the window of the bedroom, right into the eyes of the sleeping kids. Besides the sound of heavy snoring, they could hear nothing. Tyrone slowly opened his eyes, shielding his eyes from the sunlight. He reared his head up, looking around the room, examining it. He saw his friends lying around his bed, either nestled in the sleeping bags, buried in sheets and blankets, or just flat out sleeping on the floor. Tyrone wearily turned his body, letting his feet hang off the side of the small bed. Without thinking, he pushed himself off the bed and landed with a quiet thud on the floor. Ow! The soft, quiet cry that came from below him made him jump out of his skin. He quickly looked down and saw Pablo's head poking out from under the sheet, with Tyrone's foot on the small tuft of feathers on his head. Oh, dang! Sorry about that, I didn't see you there, Tyrone quietly reclaimed, reeling his foot back. Pablo quickly reared up as well, giggling a bit. Nah, dude, you're fine. Never thought I'd be waking up nearly getting my head stepped on. Tyrone just laughed as he carefully maneuvered his way throughout the room, stepping over his sleeping friends as he made his way out of the room. He made his way down the hallway and down the stairs and finally into the kitchen. His stomach growled loudly in anticipation for breakfast, but to his dismay, no one was in the kitchen. Ah, dang it, mumbled to himself. Mumbling to himself, he started back up the stairs until he heard a noise a few feet behind him. A quiet, tired groan. He tensed up a bit, but then realized what was happening, that it was his mom waking up. He continued to walk back up the stairs and back into the room. Upon entering, he saw Pablo sitting up, checking his phone. Upon hearing him enter the room, he looked up. Breakfast ready yet? No, Mom hasn't even woke up yet, Tyrone replied, a slight groan in his voice. Pablo just shrugged and laid back down, playing on his phone to pass the time. Tyrone weaved his way through the room, stepping over his sleeping friends and jumping back into his bed. So, got any plans for today yet? Tyrone asked, staring at the ceiling. Well, not really. Just play outside or something, Pablo replied, his eyes still glued to the screen of his phone. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. No ideas, no scenarios, just blank. Pablo nodded, agreeing with them. That's when he remembered something. Something important. Wait, I forgot about that. Tyrone raised his eyebrows at this. Huh? What's up? Pablo immediately sprang from his sleeping bag and jumped onto his bed, a wild and excited look in his eyes. I just remembered issue 12 of Infinity Man is being released today. It might have already been released and sitting at Joe's shop as we speak. Tyrone's eyes immediately lit up like light bulbs at this. No way! We so need to head down there and get it. I've been waiting like 2 freaking months just for it to be released. Immediately, Tyrone sprung himself off of the bed and tore open the doors to his closet, rummaging around to find some decent clothes to put on. Pablo reached into his backpack, finding his clothes he wore yesterday and slipping them on before he bounded over to the door. This in turn woke everybody up. What's going on? Tasha groggily asked, her speech being muffled by her pillow. We're heading down to the comic shop. The latest issue of Infinity Man's coming out. Tasha finally slipped on some clothes, just on a plain white shirt and with the logo Metal Lords on it, and some brown shorts. Yeah, you guys want to come? He said, bouncing over to where Pablo was. Tasha just let out a muffled groan. Austin, who was also awake, raised his head and replied, I would love to, but I'm still dog-tired, man. All that playing yesterday tuckered me out. Pablo and Tyrone scoffed at this. Well, I guess we'll all read it when we get back then. You see you guys later. Without hesitating, the two bolted down the stairs, grabbing a few dollars from their backpacks, but only got within a few feet of their front door before the voice of Tyrone's mother echoed out from her bedroom. Did you brush your teeth, sweetie? Tyrone stopped, letting out a groan. No, ma'am. I'll get that done right quick, he replied, before sprinting back up the stairs and into the bathroom. Pablo stood by the front door, awkwardly, as he heard the loud sounds of Tyrone brushing his teeth furiously upstairs. After a minute, he bounced back down the stairs and threw open the front door. All right, we'll be back, Mom. I got my phone on me, so if anything happens to me or Pablo, we'll call you. Okay, sweetie. Be safe and have fun. Tyrone's mother called out in reply. Tyrone and Pablo both bolted out of the door simultaneously, bolting over to the garage and opening it. When it did open, their ride sat in front of them. 5 bikes, all different colors, were lined up against the wall across to where Tyrone's mom's car was parked. The two grabbed their respective bikes and sped on down the street. The ride into town took only a few minutes, but it was a fun little ride. They passed by Caden's house first before riding down the entrance of their neighborhood. Once they exited their neighborhood, they went down to the main road, riding across the road. Then they passed through a bike trail in the woods, which led them to a bridge across Short Creek. Finally, they emerged from the woods and reached the downtown area. Traffic was thankfully light, making it easier for them to use the bike lane. Finally, they reached their destination, a small little shop nestled between a clothing store and a restaurant. As they got off their bikes and parked them, they both read the sign above the door in the shop. Creek Comics. Tyrone and Pablo both sped towards the door and swung it open before hastily making their way inside. Upon entering, they were greeted with the refreshing cool air from inside the shop. Their eyes went wide as they observed row after row of shelf upon shelf of comic books, action figures, toys, and movies of all sorts. Superheroes covered the walls as some of the big brand comic company names littered the ceiling. But before they could even take another step, a familiar voice boomed out from the room behind the counter. It was a bit raspy and a little high-pitched, but it was a welcoming sound. "Yo, who's there?" Tyrone and Pablo both froze before answering. "It's us, man." At this, the sound of loud and heavy footsteps could be heard coming from the back room. Finally, the person who was back there emerged. He was a rather tall pig dude with a pair of long ears and piercings in his snout. He was a rather fat man, too, with a large black shirt not doing much to cover his gut. He wore a pair of long brown pants and some boots that really didn't fit, and on his chest was one of those stick-on name tags with a name written on it in Sharpie, Joe Collins. Upon seeing the 2 middle schoolers standing in front of the counter, his cold green eyes lit up with delight as he shouted in a kinda raspy but excited voice, "Hey, guys! Nice to see you around here again!" Tyrone and Pablo both smiled wider than ever, and rushed over to the counter. "Yo, what's up, Joe bro?" Tyrone jeered, leaning over to the counter. "Oh, nothing really. Just been filing some stuff and putting some new comics on the shelves. Like that new issue of Infinity Man you guys have been waiting for," Joe replied with an excited tone. Immediately, the two practically screamed with excitement. "Where is it? I can barely wait!" Pablo shouted, immediately pulling a dollar bill from his pocket. Joe then put on a grim face. About that. There was a slight mistake at the place where they ship these things out." Pablo and Tyrone's faces dropped at this. "Ah, well, I guess we'll come back then," Tyrone started before he was cut off by Joe. "Because when I found them, there were more than 50 of them in the box," Joe squealed before whipping out something he was hiding behind his back. The 2 kids' eyes went wide as saucers as they laid their eyes upon the absolutely massive stack of comic books. All of them had the same title, Infinity Man, Issue 12, Shattered Reality. "Oh, heck yeah!" Tyrone and Pablo both nearly lost their cool, shaking with excitement. They knew exactly what this meant. More comics meant a cheaper price, just to get rid of them quicker. Immediately, they tore out their dollar bills and slammed them down the counter. "We can buy these things for everyone back at your house, man," Pablo beamed, trying to keep himself from jumping up and down. Joe just snickered. "Heck yeah! Today's your lucky day, dudes. 5 comics for only 50 cents each." They grabbed $3 bills from the piles of cash, and then the two haphazardly slammed into the counter and stuffed them onto the cash register before taking out a 50 cents in change. "Have fun reading those things, man. I heard the latest issue was crazy," Joe exclaimed, placing the 5 comic books onto the counter. The two immediately grabbed them and nodded furiously. "I sure hope it's as good as the last issue." Tyrone and Pablo began making their way back to the door hastily. "Thanks, man, you're the greatest." "No problem, man. See you later. And if you come back to nerd out about issue 12, then hit me up." The two waved at him furiously before tearing down the sidewalk where their bikes were parked. They hastily got on and began to pedal furiously down the bike lane. Oh man, I can't freaking wait to dig into this. This is gonna be epic, Paulo shouted, huffing and panting as he pedaled harder and harder, nearly passing Tyrone. Yeah, but less talk, more pedaling. We gotta get home now. Tyrone and Pablo reached the wooded trail and slowed down a bit to compensate for the rough terrain from the creek. But they finally made it back to their neighborhood and pedaled even harder than they had before now. After a minute, they finally found the house. They had swerved into the garage and parked their bikes but were sprinting full speed towards the front door. They threw open the door with a loud bang and immediately rushed upstairs. They entered into the bedroom with Tyrone jumping onto his bed and standing tall over them. You're not gonna believe this guy. Joe's had extra copies mistakenly sent in, and I managed to snag 5 for all of us. Uniqua, Austin, and Tasha all jolted upright as a wide smile spread across their face. Ha, sweet! Austin shouted, jumping to his feet. Tyrone began passing out the books to all of them, as they murmured excitedly amongst themselves. Finally they sat down and read it. The entire house was plunged into silence as they stared into the pages, eyes glued to every picture, every word, and every panel. At one point in the story, a major twist was revealed. The entire room was filled to the sound of gasping, while everyone glanced up at each other, shocked expressions on their faces. No freaking way! Tasha mumbled, staring at the comic. Dr. Pulsar is Infinity's man's father? Everyone didn't even mind this, except for Austin. His head shot up quicker than a bullet. His face grew angry as he glared at Tasha. Oh gee, thanks for spoiling it. Tasha immediately hid her face behind the comic and quietly mumbled, Oh God, I'm sorry, I forgot you're a slow reader. At this, Austin lowered his comic again and glared at her. At least I can read, he barked back, but with little effect. Dude, everyone knows how to read. God, I know, but okay, forget it. Just please don't spoil stuff like that again. Austin grumbled and continued to read. After a long hour of reading and gawking, they finally finished their comic. The first person to lay down the book was Tyrone. He gently closed the book, set it down beside him, and then glanced at everyone with a look of pure shock on his face. One by one, they all finished reading, and all stared into each other with wide eyes. Then Pablo finally broke the silence. What just happened? Tyrone just shook his head. I am legitimately shaken right now. That was an absolutely insane. That plot twist with Infinity Man and Dr. Pulsar was absolutely bonkers. I know, I nearly screamed at the reveal. You could actually feel the fear that Infinity Man felt when he found that out. Everyone frantically nodded in agreement, babbling on about how crazy the plot twist was, and how shocking and satisfying the ending of the comic was. The murmuring turned into giggling, and then full-on laughing as they joked and quipped about the comic. They continued to laugh and talk as the sun began to set. Soon, twilight dawned on the town as everyone began to wind down. The group of kids were now huddled in front of the living room TV, playing a video game. So, what's going to be the plan for the next weekend? Pablo asked, still focused on the game. I don't know, maybe just the same thing we did last night? Tasha replied, cocking her head a bit. I don't know really. I think we should change it up a bit, Pablo retorted. Wait, why not go camping near the lake? We could set up camp near the mouth of Short Creek and eat s'mores or stargaze, Austin suggested, raising a finger. Pablo took his eyes off the video game for a quick second and said, Oh, yeah, maybe. That could work. Austin smiled a bit and focused on his game again and continued. Besides, we haven't been camping in like forever. I think the last time we did was like last summer. Yeah, last summer. There was a camping trip where our tents nearly got blown away by a micro something. My dad said it was like what was it called? A microburst? Oh yeah, I remember that. Tyrone nearly pissed himself, he was so scared. Austin laughed, cutting a glance at Tyrone. Tyrone just shot him a brief glare before focusing on the game again. After a solid hour and a half of gaming, they finally quit the game. They all went up to Tyrone's bedroom and packed their things. Soon they all gathered at the door, accompanied by Tyrone and his mom. Thanks for coming over, guys. I seriously had a lot of fun. I hope we can do this next weekend if any of your parents aren't busy. Everyone nodded, and gave Tyrone either a hug or a fist bump. See you later, dude. Hopefully if the weather permits it, we can meet at Short Creek tomorrow, Pablo suggested, first looking at Tyrone and then to his mom. Tyrone's mother just smiled and nodded. Maybe. We'll see if we have anything planned. Cool. Anyway, see y'all tomorrow. Ty, I had fun. Tyrone then gave him a fist bump, and one by one they all made their way out of the door. Pablo was the last one to leave as he shut the door behind him. Tyrone then let out a sigh and began to trudge towards the stairs leading to his bedroom. Man, that was fun. I'm glad you had fun, honey. I hope you're able to hang out again next weekend. It was a joy baking for you guys. Tyrone gave his mom a friendly smile before yawning. But I gotta say, all that stuff made me exhausted. I'm gonna go on ahead and hit the sack. Alright, sweetheart. Good night. Tyrone wished his mother good night and then trudged upstairs to his bedroom. He did his normal routine, brushing his teeth, putting on his retainer, and then getting back into sleeping clothes. He jumped into the bed and wrapped the covers and blankets around him, savoring the warm, comfy feeling all over his body. He didn't even have time to reflect on the fun he had before he drifted off to sleep and into the dream world. Blue and red lights flashed throughout the trees as a police car pulled into the driveway. After about 20 minutes of driving, the police had finally arrived at the source of the 911 call. A small farm located near the border of Billsdale. One of the officers, a rather stout-looking fox, hopped out of the passenger side seat with a tall horse officer wearing a badge stepped out of the driver's seat. Before they could even take a step, the door to the farmhouse burst open, and out walked a family of sheep. The husband and wife approached them as the kids watched in the front door. Oh, thank God, officer, you arrived just in time, the sheep's wife cried before being consoled by her husband. Sorry about her, she's a little hysterical from what happened. The horse officer didn't flinch. So, you're the one who called. Good evening. He extended his hand and they both shook. So, what happened that made you want to call? The fox asked, taking out a notepad. Well, something happened out in the cow field. We were cooking some dinner when all of a sudden my wife Matilda saw a bright flash of a light near the woods. It was followed by a bang that sounded akin to a distant gunshot. A bang? Yeah, a bang. It wasn't too loud, but it was audible. I think it might have been coming from our hooligan neighbors shooting our darn cows again. The fox officer wrote everything down while the horse listened. All right, we'll go investigate. You can come along, and your wife can keep to the children if she wants to. The sheep nodded at this, and the three made their way behind the house. They walked down a small trail near the tall, overgrown field amongst the edge of the woods. The cows were huddled at the far edge of the field, far from where the flash had happened. The stench of manure filled the air, dominating the nostrils with the putrid smell. But not even a quarter mile in their walk, another horrible stench filled the air. It smelled like something was burnt. Jesus almighty! What the hell was that stench coming from? The fox officer grumbled before covering his nose. I have no idea, but I went to investigate earlier and I didn't smell it at all. The sheep replied, holding his nose in the process and gagging. As they neared where the sheep said they saw the flash, the stench grew worse. Finally, they got to a small clearing in the field where the event supposedly happened. What greeted their eyes nearly caused them to gag. Oh, what the fuck? The sheep farmer began before turning away, nearly retching. The horses and fox eyes were filled with shock at what they saw. A dead cow, lying there in the center of the clearing. Its limbs were stiff and the overpowering burnt smell was stronger than ever. Giant scorch marks and burn marks covered the poor animal from head to hoof, as it smoked a little. Dear God, what the hell happened to it? The horse officer gasped, slowly approaching it. As he approached it, he got a better look at the carcass. Sure enough, it was covered in what seemed to be third-degree burns and gashes. A large circular wound was cut into its abdomen, where some smoke was coming out of it. But then he noticed something off about the corpse. It wasn't bleeding. Huh? It's not bleeding. Not bleeding? That's new. The sheep farmer then piped in. And there's no scorch marks on the ground either. The horse raised his head to the sheep and then began to examine the ground. Sure enough, there were no black marks from a fire or burnt grass. Everything was intact underneath the carcass. Well, this is the strangest thing I've seen in all my years, the horse mumbled, getting up and stepping away from the burnt remains of the cow. I don't think so, Dave. I think it might have came from the woods after being burnt by said hooligan neighbor. the fox exclaimed, giving the horse a weird look. That may be true, but how in the hell would that explain the flash of light me and my wife saw? Okay, fair point. Yeah, and be sure to write all those details down. They may be important later. The fox nodded and frantically began to write down everything he could on the notepad. We'll get a hazmat team to dispose of the body, but for now, we're gonna have to perform some sort of an autopsy on it to see what could have caused this. The sheep farmer nodded and then started back up the trail. Once he was gone, the fox glanced up at the horse officer and jeered in a snarky tone. What do you think this is? And please don't say aliens. The horse officer just glared at him. Honestly, at this point, I don't even know anymore.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horror-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at